Cham with Wheels, a short story. "What's up, Wheels?" I said. He was a young Russian in a wheelchair. There were two nothings where his legs used to be. He liked me then, because I wasn't precious. I looked at his stumps. "What happened?" I asked. "You have trouble getting your shoes on one morning?" He laughed. He actually laughed. It takes a lot to make a young Russian in a wheelchair to laugh, but I managed it. "What are you doing here?" I asked him. I meant in an unspecified city in the post-colonial shadow of the Dutch maritime, famous for its cordial inhabitants and traffic jams in the hot monsoonal rain. "Prosthetics," he said. "I sell prosthetics." I looked at his stumps again and at where his legs used to be. "And wheelchairs," he explained further. It was a legitimate explanation in itself, and I was happy with it, but he was a long way from decidedly non-tropical Russia. "How's business?" I wondered. "Booming," he said. "How so?" "One word: diabetes." By his calculation, nearly half the population was going to have one or more of their limbs chopped off by the time they were 65, at the current rate. Or two words: diabetes and motorcycles. Even sane Asian men become maniacs on motorcycles. The number of amputees from collisions would astound you. He suggested we go for Cham. Like me, he had acquired a taste for it. Coffee and tea blended into one abomination. There was a Cham dispensary not far. "I'll race you," I said, and he laughed again. Sitting sipping Cham, we gazed around the store and at the street load of passers-by. "You see that white guy?" the young Russian said, moving his head. There was a European tourist striding down the path. "See how he walks?" said Wheels. "How does he walk?" I wondered. Wheels thought a lot about walking, both in a professional capacity and in his private domain. He had worked in the railways, he told me, back in Russia, and there had been a shunting accident. "Oh," I said, "that's going to hurt." "Not really," he said, in a very Russian sort of way. "Beyond a certain pain threshold," he said, "there was nothing. You go into shock." How does a European walk? With his head up, his chin up, his nose up, his shoulders even, and he takes long steps. Even when he isn't striding, it's a half stride. "He's going somewhere," said the Russian. "But look at this Malay man," he said, directing me to another fellow on the street. He always pronounced it Malay rather than Malay. I could see a difference, but Wheels was the one who had watched it. "The Malay swagger," he said. The Malay man was sauntering along in the sunshine. "What you do," said the legless Russian, "is you tilt your groins forward slightly as you walk, and you bring your shoulder blades closer together slightly, and you keep your head sitting loose on your neck, not wobbling like an Indian, but not like a ball on a stick like a European either." The Malay man was exactly so. The perfect exponent of it, he said, was Barack Obama. No drama, Obama. He swaggers. He's from Indonesia. "They have a different relation to time," said the Russian. "The European is in a hurry to get somewhere. The Malay takes his time." I took a sip of Cham to wash this down. He'd been in this unspecified city in the post-colonial shadow of the Dutch maritime, famous for its cordial inhabitants and traffic jams in hot monsoonal rain, doing business for several years. I was only new. "You'll see Malays," he said, "whole families, walking down the street, just out for a walk, at 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't live by clock time the way Europeans do. And you could see this," he said, "in their gait." Certainly the Malay man we were watching was entirely careless that it was 11 a.m. and Cham time, and he'd get there when he got there. The aforesaid European, on the other hand, with his long striding footsteps, looked like a man out to colonise Southeast Asia. Even when he slowed down outside a certain storefront, he dawdled as Europeans dawdle, with some dawdling purpose, still with a left foot, right foot teleology fused into the very way he walks his bones. "What about the Chinese?" I asked, trying to find a sample of it on the street. "The Chinaman," said Wheels, "takes small steps. He never strides. He's going somewhere too, but he's not in a hurry." We found a Chinaman to watch. "Look at him," said Wheels. "He's on a much longer journey than the European, and he knows the way to get there is lots of short steps." He claimed all of this was relevant to his prosthetic business. It helped him anticipate wear and tear on artificial limbs. "What journey is the Malay on?" I asked. "The Malay? The Malay says, 'Journey? What journey?' and just enjoys the sunshine." And as he said this, the Malay man we had been observing met some friends on the street, and, all grinning, they stood together, in no hurry, enjoying the sunshine. "And what about Russians?" I said. "How do they walk?" I looked at where his legs used to be and suggested the answer to the question was, "with difficulty." He laughed again. "The Russian," he then insisted, I knew it was coming, "is the perfect synthesis of the prior types: directed, casual, long-sighted, deep." I thought of a joke. "Stalin's Russia," I said. "How do Russians walk?" "Very carefully." Then I thought of an ethnic slur. "No, Russians walk like wooden chess pieces." "Speaking of balls on top of sticks," I said, "and it's usually vodka that makes them legless." "Australians," he said. "You can still see the shackles from the convict ships as you shuffle along." Cham is good for lubricating light-hearted insults on an equatorial day. He was nonetheless a living lesson in natural compensations. It was like Jose Feliciano, the famous guitarist who was blind, and that's why he was a famous guitarist. All ears, Jose. Having tangled with railway trucks in a shunting yard which slowed him down, this young Russian became a keen observer of all the subtle perambulations we take for granted day to day, an expert. "It's all about posture and embodiment," he said, "and how we hold ourselves between the sky and earth and embody our metaphysical worldview." And he exhibited that altogether Russian characteristic of being seriously scientific, but given to strange mysticisms at the same time, the metaphysics of prosthetic limbs. I'd never thought much, not explicitly, about walking myself, but then my legs were intact and I wasn't in a wheelchair. I could see there were wider implications to these observations and typologies, and would take another round of Cham at least. "Good Cham," he agreed, sipping his. "Your standard Cham is tea, coffee, milk and sugar. Lots of sugar. Gula gula. Strong, white, sweet Cham." He took another sip, saying, "Here's to diabetes."